Thanksgiving was always a time for family, laughter, and shared memories. The kitchen filled with the scent of roasting turkey, pumpkin pies, and the unmistakable hum of the dinner table set up for everyone. It was a tradition we never missed, no matter how busy life got. But this year was different. It was the one time of the year that I could count on my family to be together. So when I heard those words, Thanksgiving is canceled, we can't afford it, something inside me snapped. My dad, the person who always acted like the pillar of strength, the one who kept everything together, was now telling me we couldn't even afford to celebrate a holiday? My mind raced with disbelief. What do you mean you can't afford it? You're telling me we're canceling Thanksgiving? I asked, my voice rising despite myself. He looked at me with the same tired expression I'd seen countless times before. We're going through tough times, honey. Things are tight. You understand, right? His voice was calm, too calm for the situation. It didn't make sense. This was the same man who never failed to go all out for Thanksgiving dinner, no matter how many bills were stacked up in the corner. We'd all been there. The late nights, the stress, but he never let it show. Or so I thought. My brother sat there, avoiding eye contact, as if he knew what was coming. Mom? She was in the living room, already half distracted by her phone, not even fully paying attention to what was happening. This was becoming a pattern. My family had always depended on me, always expected me to be the one to fix things, to make sure everyone was happy, that everything was in place. But today it felt different. I stared at my dad, feeling my stomach twist into knots. You're seriously telling me that Thanksgiving is off, just like that? I repeated, trying to make sense of it. The pain in my chest was growing. We didn't need anything extravagant this year, but the idea of not even coming together for dinner, not even spending time as a family, was that really happening? Look, I said I'm sorry, he muttered, then added quickly, but we just don't have the money for it, okay? His words stung, but I could hear the familiar frustration in his tone, as if it were my fault he had to make this decision. I could barely contain my anger now. Funny, since you're all having dinner without me, apparently. I snapped back before I could stop myself. The words left my mouth before I even had time to think them through. But once I said it, I couldn't take them back. My dad froze. The words hit him like a punch. I could see the familiar guilt rising in his eyes, the shame. He looked away for a second, and I knew he wasn't prepared for this confrontation. He had always been the one in control, the one making the decisions. But this was different. I could feel the air grow heavy with tension. For the first time in years, I wasn't going to just sit back and take it. I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. After all the sacrifices I'd made for them, for the family, for their happiness, this was how they repaid me? This was how they showed me appreciation? The realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't about dinner. It wasn't about Thanksgiving. It was about everything that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. And then it hit me, the truth I'd been avoiding. They'd always expected me to handle things, to be the glue holding everything together while they coasted along. They'd never had to face the consequences of their own actions. And I was always there to clean up the mess. But now, I couldn't be that person anymore. Fine, I said, my voice cold. If you can't afford Thanksgiving, then I guess I'll make sure you won't need to worry about anything else. My heart was racing as I walked away, but I knew in that moment I was done. This wasn't about the holiday anymore. This was about respect, about boundaries, about me finally standing up for myself. I had spent years being the family fixer, the one who always showed up when things went wrong, the one who would drop everything, no matter what, to make sure everyone else was taken care of. But now, standing in the quiet of my living room, the weight of it all began to settle on me in a way it never had before. I had given them so much, my time, my energy, my patience. Yet, when it came down to it, I was nothing more than an afterthought. It wasn't the first time I had felt this way. For as long as I could remember, I had been the one to step in when the family needed saving. Whether it was stepping in to help pay bills, babysitting for hours, or simply organizing the family gatherings that no one else seemed to care about, I had always been the glue holding it all together. But in hindsight, that was the problem. I had let them lean on me, and they had taken it for granted. They had come to expect that I would always be there, no matter how little they acknowledged my sacrifices. Flashbacks rushed into my mind, vivid as if they had just happened yesterday. I remembered last year's Thanksgiving dinner when my mother had casually asked me to pick up the turkey on the way over, even though I had just finished an exhausting work week. No one bothered to ask if I needed help. No one asked how I was doing. I was just the one who made everything work. The same thing happened every single year: holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. It didn't matter what I was going through. I was always expected to prioritize their needs over my own. And every time I spoke up, every time I suggested I needed a break or simply wanted to enjoy the holidays without the pressure of being the fixer, they would guilt-trip me. I thought back to the last Christmas when my sister had shown up with her new boyfriend and expected me to drop everything to entertain them, even though I had promised myself that I would take the day off to relax. But of course, that never happened. Instead, I ended up cooking the entire meal, cleaning up afterward, and making sure everyone had a good time. I didn't mind helping, but when it was always me doing the work while others waltzed in without lifting a finger, it felt like something was breaking inside me. Then, this Thanksgiving, to hear my dad so casually announce that it was canceled and that they couldn't afford it, while I was excluded from the dinner plans, was the final straw. I had been excluded from so many things in the past, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't about finances or the holidays themselves. It was about the fact that they hadn't even considered including me. It wasn't that they needed money or help with the dinner. They didn't even care enough to ask. I wasn't part of their plans. It wasn't even a question. It was just assumed that I wouldn't be there. And for the first time in a long time, I realized just how deep the betrayal ran. All these years, I had been bending over backward to make sure everything was perfect for them. And yet, I was still treated like an outsider in my own family. They didn't see how much I had sacrificed, how much I had put aside for their sake. My needs, my feelings, none of that had ever mattered. I had been expected to quietly endure, always putting them first, never daring to ask for anything in return. As I sat there, the weight of the decision I had made began to sink in. I had cut them off, really cut them off. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I realized that I was done being the family fixer. I was done being the one who held everything together while they carried on as if nothing was wrong. It was time for me to prioritize myself for once. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt a deep sense of loss, a sense of finality. Thanksgiving wasn't just about the meal. It was about the family coming together. It was about love, tradition, and connection. But now it felt like that connection had been ripped away from me. Not by choice, but by neglect, by manipulation. And as I closed my eyes, the weight of it all crushed me. The moment everything shattered happened in an instant. I could feel my pulse racing as I stood in front of them, all of them, Mom, Dad, and Wendy. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. The lies they had told, the guilt they had piled on, it all came rushing back in a flash. I had been holding it together for so long, pretending to play my part, but not anymore. "Funny, since you're all having dinner without me," I blurted out, my voice sharp, dripping with sarcasm. The words slipped out faster than I could stop them, but they were exactly what I needed to say. Their faces froze for a moment, but I could see it. The guilt, the discomfort, they all felt it. But it wasn't enough. The moment of truth was here, and yet they didn't even flinch. Mom's expression softened, her eyes pleading, as if she was going to say something to smooth it over. But Wendy didn't even try to hide the anger. "You're being dramatic," she snapped, her voice laced with frustration. "It's just dinner, Stephen. You're acting like this is the end of the world. You're blowing things out of proportion." I stood there, feeling the sting of her words, but they didn't faze me anymore. For the first time, I didn't care about her excuses or Dad's silence. "You think I'm being dramatic?" I shot back, my heart pounding in my chest. "You all lie to me, guilt-trip me, and then when I finally have the courage to stand up for myself, I'm the one who's dramatic?" The words were out before I could stop them, but they were long overdue. Mom sighed, her voice shaking as she spoke. "You know we didn't mean to hurt you, Stephen, but this is just how it is. We've always done things like this." It wasn't a new excuse. It was the same tired, overused justification that had kept me in line for years. But not anymore. Not this time. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady and sure. "It's not just how it is. It's how you've made it. And I'm done. I'm done being the backup, Done being your safety net when it's convenient for you. I'm not doing this anymore. The room fell silent. My words lingered, hanging in the air like an unspoken challenge. There was no going back from this moment. The realization hit me like a cold slap. I wasn't just confronting them. I was finally confronting myself, my own fears of standing up for who I truly was. And in that silence, I knew this was the breaking point. No more compromises. No more putting myself last for a family that only showed up when it was convenient. I didn't waste any time. The moment the words left my lips, the weight that had been crushing me for years lifted, just for a moment. But it was enough. I walked straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and made the call. The car I had been planning to buy for them, the one I had saved for, the one I'd hoped would make everything right, was now off the table. I'd spent months thinking about it, the car symbolizing everything I had sacrificed for them over the years. It was supposed to be a grand gesture, a way to show them I still cared, to prove I was still their son, the one who always showed up, always put others first. But it wasn't a gift anymore. It was a weight, an expectation that I didn't want to bear any longer. I clicked cancel on the transaction. I felt the flood of relief rush through me, but along with it came a sharp pang of guilt. This was going to hurt them. I knew it. They were going to react, maybe even beg me to reconsider. But I had already made my decision. This wasn't just about the car, it was about everything. The years of bending over backward for them, of letting my own needs and desires take a back seat to theirs. I had been living my life in the shadows of their expectations, carrying their burden while they sat back and expected me to always be there. No more. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about me finally standing up for myself. I wasn't a doormat, a backup plan that they could call on when they needed something, and then discard when it wasn't convenient. This decision wasn't about the car. It was about reclaiming my life. The moment I hit send on the cancellation, I felt like I had finally taken back a piece of myself that I had given away over the years. A piece I hadn't even realized was gone until it was returned to me. I wasn't going to be controlled by their guilt trips, their expectations, and their endless demands anymore. The ripple effect didn't take long to hit. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. The texts flooded in. First, Mom, what are you doing, Stephen? The car was supposed to be a family gift. You can't just cancel it like that. Then Dad, with his usual quiet yet powerful words, You're breaking your mother's heart, son. But the one that really hit was Wendy's. What the hell is wrong with you? You can't just do this. You're being selfish. We've always been there for you. I sat there, staring at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was so tempting to cave in, to respond with an apology and somehow make it all better. But no, I couldn't. I had made my choice and I wasn't going back. I took a deep breath and put the phone down. A strange feeling settled over me, relief. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was on the edge of a breakdown. Instead, I felt free, empowered, but there was also guilt. It hit me in waves, like a constant undertow, trying to drag me back into their world of manipulation. I wondered if I had done the right thing. Would they understand eventually? Would they even care that I was trying to fix myself? Or was I just some failure in their eyes? The guilt was there, but it didn't have the power it once did. It was nothing compared to the relief of knowing I had taken control of my own life, for the first time in ages. The first wave hit me fast, like a storm crashing over a calm sea. My phone buzzed constantly, the screen flashing with name after name. I knew what was coming. My mom, Dad, and even Wendy, all trying to get in touch. I let the calls ring out for a while, not wanting to face it just yet. But the guilt weighed on me, and finally I picked up. Stephen, what are you doing? It was Mom, her voice shaky, laced with the kind of sadness that always made me second-guess myself. You can't just cancel the car like that. We need it. We need you. Her words twisted in my chest. It was the same script, the same plea. I had heard it so many times before. But this time I wasn't giving in. I wasn't backing down. Mom, I'm done, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been giving, and you've never cared about what I need. It's over. I could hear her gasp on the other end. Don't say that. Please, you're making a mistake. Think about how much we've done for you. How much we've supported you. She paused, her voice cracking. We're family. We love you. The guilt trip had begun, but I was prepared. I had heard it all before, the guilt-laden emotional appeals meant to reel me back in. It was their final card, the one they always played when things were about to fall apart. Mom, I've thought about it. I've thought about everything, and this isn't just about the car. It's about how you've treated me all these years. I'm done being the one who sacrifices while you all take without ever giving anything back. The phone was quiet for a moment, and then I heard her voice again, softer this time, more pleading. You're making a mistake, Stephen. Please don't cut us off. We're your family. You don't understand how much you're hurting us. I shut my eyes, fighting the pull of that familiar guilt, the one that always made me second-guess myself. But I stood firm. I understand more than you think. I'm not your punching bag anymore. This is what's best for me. I'm sorry. I hung up before she could respond. But it wasn't just Mom. Within minutes, Dad called, then Wendy, each of them with the same script. Don't be like this, Stephen. We need you, Dad said, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of desperation. And Wendy, you're being selfish. We've always been there for you, and now you're just abandoning us. The words stung, even though I knew they were manipulative. They were trying to make me feel bad. They wanted me to bend, to apologize, to go back to the way things were. But I knew I couldn't. Yet, as I sat there, staring at my phone, a nagging feeling crept in. Was I being too harsh? Could I have handled this better? What if this was too extreme? What if I was pushing them away for good? The thought made my chest tighten. I began to doubt myself, wondering if maybe I could have been more patient, maybe tried to work things out without pulling away so drastically. The guilt crept in again, quiet and insistent, telling me I might have overreacted. But then I remembered the years of sacrifice, the constant disappointment, and the never-ending manipulation. I couldn't keep living that way. They had to understand that. This was about standing up for myself, even if it meant sacrificing the comfort of the familiar guilt trips. Still, the question lingered. Had I done the right thing? Would this really make them understand, or would I just be alone in the end? I didn't know the answer yet, but I had made my choice and I wasn't turning back. The calls kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. I let them ring out, giving myself time to breathe before answering. But eventually I couldn't avoid it anymore. This time it was Dad. Stephen, son, please, his voice cracked through the phone, so raw and full of emotion that for a split second I almost wavered. You're making a mistake. We really need you here. Your mother, she's worried. And with my health problems, I don't know how much longer I can manage without you. I knew what he was doing. He'd used his health before, like a weapon, to make me feel guilty. But hearing it again, hearing the familiar tone of desperation, brought the old feelings rushing back. It was like I could see all the times I'd dropped everything to rush over, the countless hours I'd spent trying to keep everything together for them. The thought of him in pain, of Mom being worried, pulled at me. It was all too familiar. I took a deep breath before speaking, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad, I'm sorry, but this isn't about your health. It's about how you and Mom have treated me my whole life. I've always been there for you, but it's never been enough. And now you want me to keep sacrificing for you? I can't do that anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Dad's voice became softer, almost pleading. Son, please, I'm not asking for much. Just come home. For us. I don't know what I'll do if I lose you. Don't leave us like this. I felt a pang in my chest. It hit me harder than I expected. The weight of everything, the guilt, the love, the hurt, felt like it was closing in on me. But I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything I'd been through. I had to keep standing my ground. I can't, Dad. I just can't. Before he could respond, I ended the call. I didn't want to hear any more of the same empty promises. I knew the game by now. It was always the same. I would give, they would take, and nothing would change. But the calls didn't stop. They were relentless. The next few days were a blur of messages and voicemails, all begging me to come back, to fix things, to put everything behind us and move on like we always had. Wendy called too, with her usual mix of guilt and charm. You can't just walk away from family like this, she said, sounding like she was on the verge of tears. We've always been there for you. Don't you remember everything we've done together? You owe us this. It was the same line, the same manipulation. But now it didn't faze me. "Wendy, I've done enough," I told her, my voice firm. "I've given and given, and I've been treated like a doormat. You want me to come back, but nothing will change. I'm not doing this anymore. Not unless things change." The desperation in her voice was palpable. "Please, Stephen. We're family. We need you. Your dad needs you. We'll fix everything. We promise. Just come home." It wasn't the first time I'd heard those promises, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But the promises were empty. I could see right through them. They were just words, meant to manipulate me into returning to my old role. The fixer, the one who always cleaned up the mess. But I wasn't that person anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. I blocked their numbers after that. I knew it was harsh, but I couldn't keep getting sucked back into their web. I had to protect myself. The calls stopped coming, but the guilt lingered. The quiet moments when I'd question whether I was being too harsh, whether I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I had made the right decision. The family had to learn to stand on their own for once. The moment I ended the call with Wendy, something inside me shifted. It was as though a heavy burden that I didn't even realize I was carrying had finally been lifted from my shoulders. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have agonized over every word, every action. I would have second-guessed myself until I couldn't breathe. But this time, I didn't feel the usual guilt creeping in. I didn't feel the tug of obligation, the nagging sense that I was somehow betraying my family. I had always thought that family was everything, that loyalty and sacrifice were the ultimate signs of love. I had believed for so long that my role in the family was to be the fixer, the one who picked up the pieces, who dealt with the mess, who bore the weight of everyone else's problems. But as I stood there, alone in my apartment, I realized that I had been a martyr to a system that took and took without ever giving anything back. This wasn't just about the car, or the holidays, or even the years of feeling like I was the only one who cared. It was about something much deeper. It was about my self-worth. I had spent so many years putting everyone else's needs first that I had forgotten about myself. My life had been nothing but a string of sacrifices, all for people who only saw me as a tool to make their lives easier. But now, for the first time, I felt empowered. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't scared to stand up for myself. In fact, it felt liberating. For once, I wasn't the one caving under pressure. I wasn't the one cleaning up after everyone. I was reclaiming my own life, my own happiness. The satisfaction of standing up for myself was something I had never experienced before. It was bittersweet, of course. I couldn't deny that a part of me still longed for the family I had tried so hard to hold together. There were moments, fleeting, painful moments, when I wished things had turned out differently. But those moments were getting fewer and fewer. The more I let go, the more I saw the freedom in it. Family doesn't always mean blood. It doesn't always mean that you have to endure everything, sacrifice everything, for people who are willing to discard you when it's convenient for them. The love I had been giving, the loyalty I had been offering was a one-way street. I had allowed myself to be used for so long that I had lost sight of what healthy love and boundaries looked like. I had learned that the most loving thing I could do for myself and for them was to let go. It wasn't easy and it didn't feel good at first, but it was the right thing, and that was something I needed to come to terms with. In the days that followed, I began to reflect on the journey I had been on. I wasn't the person I had been a few months ago, the anxious, guilt-ridden man who had believed he had to keep fixing everything. I was stronger now. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I had stood firm on it. I wasn't the family doormat anymore. I was someone who could prioritize themselves, and that was the most important transformation of all. As the weeks passed, the calls kept coming. The voicemails piled up, each one filled with varying degrees of desperation, guilt, and frustration. At first, I felt a twinge of something, regret perhaps or fear. But then each time I listened to their voices, I realized something that had been staring me in the face all along. They weren't just trying to make things right. They were trying to manipulate me to get me back into the role I had so willingly played for all those years. I stayed firm. I ignored their messages. I didn't return the calls. For the first time in my life, I had taken control. I had said no, and that no had become my shield. There was no turning back now. My decision had been made, and there was no reason to question it. As the days turned into weeks, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It wasn't immediate, of course. At first, it was a strange, unfamiliar kind of calm, like stepping into a new world where I was no longer bound by the weight of other people's expectations. But little by little, I began to see the fruits of my decision. I found new friends, people who didn't see me as a fixer or a problem solver. They just saw me, the real me. They didn't need me to sacrifice my happiness for them. Instead, we laughed, we shared experiences, and most importantly, they respected my boundaries. I also pursued things I had always put off. I started painting again, something I loved as a child but had abandoned in the chaos of family drama. I took up cooking classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I traveled, exploring new places and meeting new people. But the most important change wasn't in what I was doing, but in how I felt about it. I had found a sense of freedom I never thought possible. Meanwhile, the family's attempts grew more desperate. They tried calling again, sending messages, and even showing up at my apartment unannounced. But by now, I was different. I no longer felt the urge to answer the phone or explain myself. It had become clear to me that the only thing they wanted was to put me back in my place, to restore the dynamic that had kept me as their emotional punching bag. And then one final message came through. It was my father, and this time there was no manipulation in his tone, no guilt-tripping, just regret. "I'm sorry, son," he said. "We were wrong. I was wrong. I didn't realize what I had until it was too late. I hope you can forgive us." But by the time I heard those words, it didn't matter anymore. I had already moved on. The person I had become, the life I had built, was far more valuable than any apology they could offer. I had learned the most important lesson of all. Love, especially family love, should never come with strings attached. I had set myself free, and in doing so, I had created a new life, one that was mine to live on my terms. Sometimes cutting off the toxic people in your life isn't just necessary, it's empowering. And for the first time, I truly understood that.